Welcome to the National Archives and Records Administration's 2025 Genealogy Series. My name is Erin Townsend, and I'm the coordinator of this year's program. We are so happy you've joined us. Every year, the National Archives hosts the Genealogy Series, a free educational genealogy event broadcast on YouTube. Our presenters are records experts from National Archives locations across the United States. The sessions offer family history research tools on federal records and are open to everyone, from beginners to experienced family historians. All are welcome. We invite you to join the conversation. During each session's premiere, you can participate with the presenters and other family historians via live chat. Ask questions and get the presenters' answers anytime throughout the video and for an additional 10 minutes after the presentation ends. Here's how to engage in the live chat. You can ask questions via chat by first logging into YouTube. Continue to watch chat because the speaker will answer the questions there. Type your questions at any time throughout the presentation. Please keep your questions on today's topic. We are offering 5 genealogy sessions in May and June, starting May 13th and ending June 17th. If you miss a premiere broadcast, please know that the videos and handouts remain available online after the event, where you can view them at your convenience. Welcome to today's presentation titled Researching Immigrant Ancestors, Alien Registration, AR-2 Forms. We have 2 presenters today, Elizabeth Burns and John LeGloahec. Elizabeth is an archivist for the National Archives at Kansas City who serves as a subject matter expert for immigrant-related records and is the lead archivist for Alien Files, or A-Files reference. She received a bachelor's degree in history at Truman State University and a master's degree in history and museum studies at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. John, an archivist in the Electronic Records Reference Branch, has been with the National Archives since June 2006. He holds a Master of Library Science from the University of Albany. John is very active professionally and currently serves as president of the National Archives Assembly and has served in leadership roles in several other professional organizations. Welcome, Elizabeth and John. Thank you for your presentation today.
We'd like to welcome everyone to today's presentation on alien registration forms, or AR-2 forms. Elizabeth and I are very excited to be here today, and we hope to answer all of your questions about these forms, which are a treasure trove of information about finding your ancestors, wherever they may come from. During today's presentation, we're going to focus on 3 areas: some history and background to the Alien Registration Act of 1940, that led to the creation of AR-2 forms, a broad, high-level overview of the information that's contained on the AR-2 forms, and how we use that information when we respond to researcher questions about the AR-2s. Finally, we'll look to the process by which we respond to requests for AR-2 records, including showing how researchers can search for records in NARA's Access to Archival Databases, or AAD, and how the Electronic Records Division fulfills orders for AR-2 records. Elizabeth?
As part of our conversation about record requests, we'll also look at a secondary record series where AR-2 records can appear, the Alien Files, more commonly called A-Files. Before we talk documents, though, let's look at some of the history around the alien registration process.
In June of 1940, the United States Congress enacted the Alien Registration Act, also known as the Smith Act, named for Congressman Howard W. Smith, a Democrat from Virginia. By this time, war in Europe had begun, and there were national security concerns. The act required all non-citizens or resident aliens entering and living within United States borders register their alien status with the government. When President Franklin Roosevelt signed the act into law, he wrote the act should, quote, be interpreted and administered as a program designed not only for the protection of the country, but also for the protection of the loyal aliens who are its guests. The registration and identification of approximately 3.5 million aliens who are now within our borders do not carry with them any stigma or implication of hostility toward those who, while they may not be citizens, are loyal to this country and its institutions. While there were concerns about the federal government's use of the information gathered in the registration process, opposition to the Alien Registration Act was minimal, and there was a widespread effort, as can be seen here, with Hollywood actors and actresses helping out to encourage people to register their status. If an individual was unsure of their citizenship status, they were required to register even if it was later determined they were a U.S. citizen. Registration began in August of 1940 at local post offices with a goal of registering more than 3 million people by the end of 1940. In 1944, when the AR-2 record series closed, the program had registered more than 5.6 million people. The process included a preliminary questionnaire form, the AR-1 form, that could be completed at home ahead of time to gather the necessary information for the AR-2. The ability to add additional data, the AR-2A form, and fingerprints were taken. Individuals under the age of 14 were excluded from registering. Once the registration process was completed, an A number was assigned to the individual, originally a 7-digit number, and an alien registration receipt card, the AR-3 form, as seen on this slide, containing this number was mailed to each registrant as proof of registration. Elizabeth?
The concept of a card to prove a person may live and work permanently in the United States began with the Alien Registration Receipt Card and persists today in the Permanent Resident Card, also called a green card. The first receipt cards were printed on Form AR-3 on white paper and were the result of the Alien Registration Act of 1940. The Alien Registration Act did not make distinctions between lawful permanent residents and other non-citizens. All non-citizens registered and received the same receipt card. After World War II ended, registration became part of regular immigration procedures. Rather than registering at the post office, new arrivals registered upon arrival at a port of entry. Under the new procedure, the Immigration and Naturalization Service issued different registration documents to aliens based upon their admission status. Although use of the AR-2 ended in 1944, alien registration continued after April 1st, 1944 on different forms that were filed in a new series of individual records called A-files. A-files moved the Immigration and Naturalization Service from an action-based record system to an individual-based record system. Each A-file was numbered using the alien registration number, A number, assigned to the given individual. Rather than opening a new file for each action an immigrant took, such as applying for a visa and filing a naturalization application, the agency would open one file for each immigrant and place all of their paperwork in that file. The Immigration and Naturalization Service utilized multiple versions of the alien registration form from 1940 to 1944, including the standard AR-2, the AR-102 Foreign Service Form, which was completed at consular offices, and the AR-102X Seaman Form. All iterations of the form are included within the AR-2 record series at NARA. Looking broadly at the AR-2 record series, it's important to note the research value that the form holds. AR-2 forms can document an individual's presence in the United States during the early 1940s. The Alien Registration Program registered many resident non-citizens between August 1940 and early 1941 who had been living in the United States for decades. Although AR-2 forms are not official arrival records, the AR-2 form may be the only INS record of immigrants who arrived as early as the 1880s. For many others, the AR-2 form may be their only other immigration-related record after their initial immigrant arrival record. So, where are the majority of the registrations from originally?
It is not surprising that the first two countries on this list have geographic proximity to the United States, which is likely why they are on the top two positions. It is noteworthy, however, that the circumstances where individuals who may have entered the United States from our neighbors to the north and south may not have been born there. I recently helped a researcher who was looking for an ancestor from Poland who had arrived in the United States through Mexico. The other three countries on this list are also indicative of the current events of the time. Of course, World War II had begun in Europe the prior year, and there were individuals who had perhaps thought the time was right to seek refuge elsewhere. In addition, there were already significant populations of Eastern European ethnicities across the United States. Elizabeth, let's dive into the records, shall we?
With that background laid, let's turn our attention to the records themselves. The AR-2 form gathered great basic biographical information for genealogists. Registrants answered 15 multi-part questions providing their full name and variants, address at time of registration, when and where they were born, when and where they entered the country, occupation, organizational memberships, prior military service, prior attempts to naturalize in the US, and criminal history. It's important to remember that the registrant was responding to these questions in 1940, at a time that may have been far removed from their birth, arrival, and other actions accounted for on the form. So there are cases where the information may be incomplete, unanswered, or inaccurate. Responses to the questions can serve as a fantastic jumping off point to connect with other record series, though. If the registrant provided a date, port, and vessel of their arrival, can you locate the correlating passenger manifest? If the registrant notes that they filed a declaration of intention and/or petition for naturalization, can you track down the court documents? If they reference prior foreign military service, can you determine where military personal records for their country of origin are maintained? If they note any criminal history, can you determine if police or court records may exist documenting the occurrence? Researchers need to think beyond the face value information on the form and consider what next steps the form may allow in their search process.
The first 6 questions on the AR-2 form were basic vital information about the respondent. When we receive inquiries from people, this is the information that we most often get, albeit with the most spelling variations for the individuals, especially for our friends from Italy. Once this process began here in College Park, and I think I can speak for Elizabeth too, we saw a great many requests from companies helping individuals to secure dual citizenship for Italy. Who knew there were so many different ways to spell Giuseppe? When we perform our searches, we have the ability to use wildcards, which allows us to search for a spelling variation and get multiple hits to zero in on an individual on a list of people with similar names. You can only wade through so many Giuseppes until your eyes start to glaze over without some additional information to help you. The second and third questions are also information that individuals will usually provide us with and are most helpful in locating the ancestors they are trying to find. Question 7 is useful to the researcher, and we can often tell the researcher that the road does not end there. There are other records at the National Archives, specifically passenger records, that may be helpful to the researcher in finding other family members that they may have traveled with the individual that they are looking for. Questions 10 and 11, activities in military service, and then question 14 and 15, criminal offenses in foreign organizations, were listed on the form for national security purposes. While the AR-2 form is the form that most people are familiar with and is in most demand, there are several pages that comprise the alien registration form that can be seen here. Many of the other AR-2 form parts no longer exist. Also, some of them may exist in the individual's A files. In the AR-2 files in the custody of the Electronic Records Division, we have seen very few actual receipt cards, the AR-3 form, and we have also come across a limited number of the AR-2A forms, the supplemental data form, of which many of them have also been blank.
As John noted, in many cases, the additional form parts are no longer extant. But there are occasions where the different pieces of the registration process can appear in NARA's holdings. The images on the screen are sample AR-2A supplemental information and AR-4 fingerprint forms found in A files in NARA's holdings. The supplemental sheet was often used to explain inconsistencies or anomalies in data reported on the AR-2. The fingerprint form duplicated high-level data from the AR-2 and provided a space for fingerprint impressions.
This chart shows the range of A numbers and AR-2 forms that are available. As you can see, while there are some ranges for which there are no AR-2 forms in our custody, there may be a form in the individual's A file, which would be at the National Archives at Kansas City, the National Archives at San Francisco, or the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. A note here about Siemens AR-2 forms. It is not unusual to find seamen with multiple AR-2 forms because they might have been issued another AR-2 form for when they arrived at a new port on another ship, or even if they had been previously issued an AR-2 form. There are a number of AR-2 records for individuals who were born in the United States. The majority of these records concern women who married men who were not citizens of the United States and lost their U.S. citizenship, although they did not realize it at the time. In addition, there were men who were interested in joining up in the fight against the Axis powers and headed for Canada to join the Royal Air Force. Signing up in the RAF forced them to relinquish their U.S. citizenship.
The Alien Registration Division of the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, created the original Flexalign Index, commonly called FLEX, in 1940 to index AR-2 forms. Additionally, INS microfilmed the completed AR-2 forms, and most of the original AR-2 forms were subsequently destroyed. However, some original AR-2 forms ended up in A files, open under the same A number, when the subject immigrants had subsequent interactions with INS. After the microfilm was converted to an electronic format, the AR-2 digital images and Flexalign were managed by INS, later United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, as a component of the Microfilm Digitization Application System, MIDAS. The electronic AR-2 and Flex components of MIDAS transitioned to NARA's legal custody and are now serviced by NARA's Electronic Records Division. It's important to note that Flex entries can point to an alien registration AR-2 form and or an alien file, A file.
We encourage researchers to look for their ancestors in the Flexalign Index data file available on NARA's Access to Archival Databases, AAD, first, before contacting the Electronic Records Division. At this point in the presentation, we will show some simple searches on AAD. It's important to note here that the AR-2s are arranged and retrieved by A number, so Flexalign is a great place to start your search. Even if you don't locate an A number, you can still submit a request, as the database we can search may yield a result. Of the Flexalign Index records that are contained in AAD, not all individuals will have AR-2 forms. In some cases, a Flexalign Index entry may correspond to an A file, especially for an A number that was assigned after 1944. As with many systems where the data was originally entered by humans, there are errors, spelling mistakes, incorrect entries, and other inconsistencies for the records. These records will not be changed, as this is how the records were transferred to the National Archives. At this point in our presentation, we're going to do a little live searching in AAD, or NARA's Access to Archival Databases. This way, when you're preparing to make your request to the National Archives, you should always start your search in the Flexalign Index database. This way, what you do is if you find a record in AAD, you'll have all of the information that you need to help us find the correct AR-2 for you. What you do is you can start at the AAD homepage, which you can see here is at aad.archives.gov. And the Flexalign Index database is currently conveniently located right on the homepage under the What's New banner, Flexalign Index database. But you can also find it by clicking the Immigrants hyperlink under the Browse by Category, which you'll then see two series which are listed, and then you can click on the Binoculars button under Flexalign Index data file. You will then see the search fields that you can search for in the Flexalign Index data file. you can search by the individual's first name, last name, a number, birth year, the state of they were living in at the time of their registration, and the country of birth that they were living in. Next to the search boxes, you can see the sample values that you can search for, including the country of birth, where you can see the sample values. And then on the left side are the various values by which you can search for. All of the values, any of the values, or the exact phrase of the values that you're searching for. So we're going to search for my grandfather. So my last name starts with LE, which in French means the. So I'm going to drop that from the search that I do. So I'm just going to put in the remaining letters in my last name, which you can see here, and then I'm going to click the search button. It returns 6 records, and my grandfather's first name was Victor, and you can see here it is the last record in the list. When you click on that, you can see here that my grandfather's A number is 2910445. I would be able to email myself at the Electronic Records Division and request a copy of his AR-2 form, and then I would get something like this back from the Electronic Records Division and get a copy of his AR-2 form. This is how you would perform a Flexalign index search in the AAD Flexalign index database. We typically get several kinds of requests for records in the Electronic Records Division. They're really vague requests. I'm looking for someone and I really don't know where to begin. I think they came from X country, they came around this time, they were born around 1890, and they were living in New York City. The AAD follow-up. I found this entry in AAD. Now what do I do? The USIS follow-up. I've been to USIS. They sent me this letter. It has an A number and an AR-2 number. Now what do I do? The professionals. I'm working on behalf of a client who's trying to get dual citizenship, and we've located their ancestor, and we'd like to get a certified copy of their AR-2 record. For the most part, the requests for records for individuals born over 100 years ago do not require a FOIA request. However, some researchers will still invoke FOIA in their messages, and we will respond accordingly. There are also instances where FOIA is needed, and individuals will need to provide proof of death if the individual was born less than 100 years ago in order for us to be able to provide that record. In most cases, the emails that come to electronic records arrive with most, if not all, of the pertinent information that we need to search and locate an AR-2 form for a researcher. The researcher has often been to USIS first, and they have referred them to us, and they have been given the individual's A number, which is the key to locating the person they are looking for. But sometimes, maybe after a family get-together and everybody got talking about Grandpa Giuseppe, and they wanted to know, but nobody could remember, so they decided to ask the National Archives. If you come to us cold, the basic information we are going to need to assist you in searching for your ancestors is the name of the person, including any and all spelling variations, the country the person was from, what year, or an approximate year. Obviously, the A number is key if you know it. What state the individual was living in when they registered is also helpful for confirming we have located the right individual. Finally, the last piece of information that we can use to confirm an identity on an AR-2 form is the estimated year when the individual entered the United States. Some of our researchers are unclear what they will do with this information when they get it from us, while others have come to us with a plan of dual citizenship or other international opportunities. As a result, sometimes we often have multiple back and forth communications with the researchers on what their wishes are. We have added an auto reply email response that generates to all who email cer@nara.gov, requesting that researchers also provide us with information that will help us if they are planning on ordering a reproduction of the record, including their billing address, their email address, so we can send a PDF version of the record via e-delivery, and their shipping address if they are requesting a certified copy. After we perform searches in the Flex database and find a record, we can respond to the researcher based on what their request was. Do they want a certified copy, just a PDF, or were they not clear? We will provide them with some basics from the AR-2 form, confirming some of the information they provided to us, and then requesting from them what they would like to do next. If they've requested a PDF copy and/or a certified copy and have provided their information, we can prepare a price quotation. We will sometimes close our responses with a link to the general immigration page on the National Archives webpage. We often remind our researchers that the Electronic Records Division does not have custody of naturalization records and that they will need to go elsewhere for those records. We do not have custody of A files, and AR-2 records are not A files. We can provide a negative search letter, but only for a search of the AR-2 records and not for records that are not in our custody. We have become proficient in locating records in Flex with the information that researchers provide to us when they don't have an A number, using wildcards, searching within a decade range, searching a state as opposed to a city, and other options to try and find someone. But we do strike out. What we will tell researchers in this case is that there are several possible reasons that why we did not locate a record. The individual may not have completed an alien registration form. The alien registration form was not included with the rest of the forms when they were microfilmed and/or indexed. The alien registration form was moved to a different file, so was no longer with the rest of the forms when they were microfilmed. The alien registration form may have moved to the AR-2 form to the individual's A file. And then FlexAlign served as the index to the AR-2 forms during World War II, and some A files dated between 1944 and 1954. Therefore, if the individual naturalized or passed away before August 1940, they would not have completed the form. The FlexAlign index contains inaccurate information, which makes it difficult to search and locate records. Individuals completed the AR-2 forms to the best of their knowledge, but may have misremembered their birth date, their country of birth, or other names they had gone by. The INS manually indexed the alien registration forms, so typos can occur. Staff transcribed the information. Human error is always a possibility. There are known gaps in the FlexAlign index. There are about 1.25 million A numbers associated with AR-2 forms that are not listed in the FlexAlign index. We know of about 1 million of those A numbers included in the USIS master index, which contains names, year of birth, and A numbers. However, NARA has not yet taken custody of the master index at this time. You can always submit a master index search request to the USIS Genealogy program at the USIS Genealogy webpage. We have fulfilled over 1,000 orders for AR-2 forms since the Electronic Records Division took custody of the forms. About 600 of them were for certified records. The rest have been just straight PDF orders.
Now that we've gone over the electronic AR-2 part of the equation, let's look at another record series where AR-2 records can appear. On April 1st, 1944, the Immigration and Naturalization Service began using alien registration numbers, A numbers, to create individual case files called alien files, or A files. In some cases, the original paper AR-2 form was the first document placed into a newly created A file. The files reflect the interaction of an immigrant with the federal government throughout their time in the United States, up to the time of any final action, which could include death, departure, deportation, permanent resident status, or citizenship. Currently, the National Archives only maintains A files for individuals born 1925 and prior with large gaps. A files that have not yet been transferred to the National Archives for permanent retention can be requested through the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. One common question I receive is, what is the difference between the AR-2 and an A file? At its most basic level, the AR-2 is a single form tied to a particular process, while the A file is a complete record of an individual's interactions with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and at times other federal agencies. An A file can contain the original paper AR-2 form, the original full-color document that NARA's electronic records may maintain a digitized microfilm copy of. At NARA, A files are maintained by the National Archives at Kansas City and the National Archives at San Francisco. Kansas City is receiving A files for the entire U.S. and its territories. San Francisco is receiving some of the A files from the Immigration and Naturalization Service district offices in San Francisco, Reno, Guam, and Honolulu. All of the A files currently maintained by the National Archives have been indexed in the National Archives catalog, where researchers can search with a number of different approaches using the subject's name and/or alien registration number. Looking at the results list in the catalog, you will have all of the details you need to submit a successful request to NARA if you determine that a record may match the individual you're seeking. This anatomy of an A file catalog result shows you the most important pieces of information you should note as you're working. If you're searching using an alien registration number, you can search from the online catalog main page, catalog.archives.gov, and type the A number in A123456 format with a leading A and no spaces or punctuation, just A followed by the straight numeric run. If an A file associated with that A number is maintained by the National Archives, the catalog entry will populate as the first search result. The best way to focus your search when you don't have an A number is to go directly into the A file series for Kansas City or San Francisco. Those are National Archives identifiers 4488912 and 6105565. And click on the Search Within This Series button to limit your search to only A files at that location. A quick aside, you may want to search both Kansas City and San Francisco A file series if the individual you're researching resided in the San Francisco, Reno, Guam, or Honolulu areas. When I complete a search within the series in the catalog, I normally try the following search term combinations and browse the result lists: surname, first name and surname and year of birth, for example, Grande in 1875, first name and year of birth, or exact date of birth, for example, 9/5/1903, or with leading zeros, 09/05/1903. To learn more about the background of records inside and request processes for A files, please check out my 2024 Genealogy series presentation. Depending on findings at NARA, researchers may need to continue their search with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. USCIS has two potential request workflows. The USCIS Genealogy program maintains a variety of historic immigration and naturalization service file types, including A files numbered below 8 million. And the USCIS Freedom of Information Act, FOIA program, maintains A files numbered above 8 million. The 8 million A number divide loosely reflects arrivals to the U.S. before and after 1951. Researchers may discover A numbers in the Flexalign that do not correlate with AR-2 records or A files maintained by NARA. In these cases, requests to USCIS can be fruitful.
Thank you so much for attending today's session. I know that Elizabeth and I have enjoyed speaking to you. We hope the information we've provided to you will help you with your requests in the future, and we look forward to helping you with your requests. I want to again make a pitch that the link to the AR-2 page on this slide does point out the basic information and provides guidance on how to make a request to our unit. Elizabeth?
We hope that today's sessions provided you with a stronger understanding of what AR-2 forms are, how they may be useful in your research, and what you need to do to successfully request an AR-2. If you have questions about AR-2 and A-file research or next steps in your immigrant research process, please email our staff so that we can assist you. We hope to see many of you submitting requests in the coming weeks and months. Thank you for your time today.
Hello, I'm Sarah Farinholt, Deputy Executive for Archival Operations and Research Services, and I want to thank you for joining us for the National Archives and Records Administration's 2025 Genealogy Series. As we conclude this year's program, we want to thank you all for your participation and your enthusiasm. We hope the sessions have provided you with new tools, knowledge, and inspiration to continue your genealogical research. Our presenters have shared research tools and tips for exploring your family history. Their presentations explained how to use a wide array of records from National Archives holdings and have featured espionage, Native American veterans, GC cops and robbers, and alien registration forms. This year's program also included a great presentation on disaster preparedness and response for your family collections. But don't worry if you missed a premiere. All session recordings and handouts are available on our Genealogy Series webpage. As we close out this year's program, we want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has made the 2025 Genealogy Series possible, those who have led sessions and those behind the scenes. Thank you. And thank you for your participation in the 2025 Genealogy Series and your continued interest in the National Archives. We hope to see you again soon for future events and wish you all success in your many genealogical endeavors.
Thank you again for watching. This ends the lecture portion of the broadcast, but we will continue to take your questions about today's topic in the chat. If we do not get to your question, please send us an email at inquire@nara.gov. Videos and handouts from the program will remain available on this YouTube page and our website. We plan future programs based on your feedback. Would you please take a minute to complete our short online evaluation form? At this time, I'd like to thank the Genealogy Series team who contributed to the success of this program. We are grateful for your work. If you enjoyed this video, check out our Know Your Records program. We have over 100 educational videos on how to conduct research at the National Archives. Although this concludes the video portion of the broadcast, we will continue to take your questions in the chat for another 10 minutes. Please stay if you have questions. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation.